The name Elizabeth Bathory conjures images of Gothic horror, cruelty, and a thirst for the macabre. Also known as the Blood Countess, her story is a blend of historical facts and chilling legends that have captivated the imagination of scholars for centuries, painting a portrait of a woman whose actions remain a subject of intense scrutiny and debate. Legends speak of Elizabeth as a psychopathic serial killer who tortured and murdered hundreds of young women between 1590 and 1610, leaving a pile of corpses in her wake. Abusing her royal power, she lured many victims to the darkest parts of her castle with promises of employment or education. But for many, the pain and suffering that awaited them would be unlike anything we could ever imagine. This is a story of a woman, a castle, and the darkness that can consume the human soul. This is the story of Europe's most sadistic serial killer. Elizabeth Bathory was born on August 7, 1560, at Exeter Castle in the Kingdom of Hungary, located in present-day Slovakia. She belonged to the Bathory family, a clan of immense influence and wealth that had played a prominent role in Hungarian history for generations. The Bathorys were known for their political power, military prowess, and, as some accounts suggest, a certain degree of eccentricity and ruthlessness. Her family tree included kings, cardinals, knights, and judges, but also individuals with a history of mental health issues and violent tendencies. This complex lineage would shape Elizabeth's life and, arguably, contribute to the events that would define her legacy. Her father was Baron George VI, and her mother was Baroness Anna, both of whom were members of the Bathory family. This familial connection meant that Elizabeth was raised within a world of privilege and power, but also one where violence and cruelty were, unfortunately, not uncommon. Some sources suggest that Elizabeth's upbringing may have included exposure to harsh punishments and displays of brutality, which could have influenced her later behavior. Elizabeth received a privileged education, learning Latin, German, Hungarian, and Greek. She was raised as a Calvinist Protestant, and by the tender age of 13, she had already allegedly given birth to a child. The child, allegedly fathered by a peasant boy, was reportedly given away to a local woman trusted by the Bathory family. The woman was paid for her actions, and the child was taken to Wallachia, never to be seen again. By the time Elizabeth was 15, in 1575, she was pushed into a strategic marriage with Count Ferenc Nadasdy. This alliance not only strengthened the Bathory family's position, but also expanded their land holdings. Ferenc Nadasdy, a prominent figure in Hungarian society, was known for his military service and his role in defending the kingdom against the Ottoman Turks. The couple primarily resided at Nadasdy's castle in Sarvar, with occasional stays at Chaktice Castle in Slovakia. During Ferenc's frequent military campaigns, Elizabeth took charge of managing the family's vast estates and business affairs. This responsibility granted her significant autonomy and power, but it was also during this period that the first rumors of her cruelty began to circulate. Chaktice Castle sits perched atop an isolated hill in what is now Slovakia. The castle's imposing silhouette, with its austere stone walls and labyrinthine passages, fostered an environment of secrecy and dread. The castle's isolation, surrounded by dense forests, created a barrier that shielded her from the outside world. This is where Elizabeth would allow her darkest tendencies to take control, and within these cold walls, she would commit atrocious crimes that would leave a dark stain on the nation for centuries to come. The core of Bathory's infamy lies in the accusations of systematic torture and murder that emerged in the early 17th century. She was accused of abusing and killing young women, primarily peasant girls, employed as servants on her estates. These accusations, drawn from witness testimonies, depict a chilling and methodical level of cruelty, and the gruesome details of her crimes better resemble a nightmare rather than reality. It's said that she was driven by a desperate fear of aging, a vanity that consumed her. This fear, according to legend, led her to believe that bathing in the blood of her victims would restore her youth and beauty. This belief, if true, fueled a reign of terror that spanned years, leaving a trail of suffering and death in its wake. The alleged atrocities reportedly began in the late 1580s and continued for over 2 decades. Accounts describe how her once humble abode was transformed into a chamber of horrors, where young women were subjected to unspeakable tortures. They were severely beaten, mutilated, and forced to endure prolonged suffering, all in the name of Bathory's twisted quest for eternal youth. The testimonies detail a variety of brutalities, ranging from physical abuse to starvation and other cruel punishments designed to instill fear. Instruments of cruelty, such as iron restraints, needles, and knives, were allegedly used to inflict agonizing pain. Some accounts described victims being stripped, doused with water, and left outside in the winter cold, whereas others were attacked with fire. The exact number of victims is disputed, but the highest estimates suggest as many as 650 people fell victim to her twisted wrath, according to the testimony of a servant who served Elizabeth. But to this day, the exact number of victims remains a widely debated topic. Some historians propose this number is an exaggeration, with the actual number of victims being anywhere from several dozen to around 100. Nonetheless, we can be certain that unimaginable horrors occurred within the infamous castle. But what could drive a woman to commit such atrocious acts? To many historians, her behavior was heavily influenced by the brutalities she was subject to and observed during her young years. Those serving her family were often beaten in front of her, and she was even forced to watch a public execution at just 6 years old. However, the darker aspects of this tale that would bring her notoriety were, in part, influenced by her husband, Nadasdi, who thoroughly enjoyed watching others suffer. During the early part of their marriage, Nadasdi schooled Elizabeth in torture, which would later become an integral part of her everyday life. On one occasion, Nadasdi sought to entertain his wife by having a young girl restrained and covered in honey, only to be attacked by insects. She was further corrupted by her aunt Clara, who introduced her to a shadowy circle of individuals, including witches, sorcerers, and occultists. Perhaps the most enduring legend surrounding Elizabeth Bathory is her alleged involvement in blood rituals, particularly the act of bathing in the blood of virgins, likely influenced by the various sorcerers and dark occultists she encountered under her aunt's tutelage. Accounts claim that Elizabeth became fascinated with blood magic and believed it was a means to extend her life. According to the legend, Bathory's alleged obsession with maintaining her youthful appearance led her to commit horrific acts. She is said to have ordered the torture and murder of young women, primarily servant girls, and later, daughters of the lesser gentry, to obtain their blood. The blood was then supposedly collected and used for bathing, with the Countess believing this would prevent aging and maintain her beauty. But what would drive an individual to ritually murder so many women before bathing in their blood? This gruesome narrative suggests that Bathory truly believed she could somehow benefit from the sinister practice. The purported motivation behind Bathory's alleged bloodbaths is certainly rooted in the desire for eternal youth and beauty, a common theme in folklore and mythology. Her story suggests she was somewhat vain and obsessed with her appearance, and the bloodbaths were her attempt to defy the natural process of aging. However, it's important to note that the blood-bathing aspect of the Bathory legend is not supported by contemporary evidence. The first mention of Bathory's bloodbaths appeared over a century after her death in 1729 in a book by Jesuit scholar Laszlo Turozzi. Modern historians dismiss the idea, citing it as sensationalized myth-making, but the image of the Blood Countess immersed in a crimson bath remains a potent symbol of her alleged depravity. This myth has become deeply entrenched in popular culture, despite the lack of historical evidence to support it. Elizabeth's association with blood rituals has led some scholars to propose that she served as the inspiration for Bram Stoker's fictional character, Count Dracula. His crimes involved the predation of humans for blood. The source of his immortality and power. Dracula's victims are typically drained of blood, just like Elizabeth's. The key similarities between Bathory and Dracula lie in their reliance on blood, their use of castles as a base of operations, and their association with violence and death. Both figures are associated with a specific location, Bathory with her castle in Captivate, and Dracula with his castle in Transylvania. The extent to which Elizabeth Bathory directly influenced Bram Stoker's creation of Dracula is a subject of debate. Some scholars, like Raymond McNally, argue that Bathory was a primary inspiration, pointing to similarities in settings, motifs, and the fact that Stoker may have read about her. The drinking of blood as an aid in retaining youth was not a part of general vampire lore until Bram Stoker's Dracula. Nonetheless, setting aside myth and fantasy, the truth about Elizabeth Bathory's crimes may never be fully known. The available evidence is incomplete and subject to interpretation. However, her story serves as a reminder of the complexities of history, the dangers of power, and the enduring fascination with the dark side of human nature. Elizabeth's long spree of terror could not have been accomplished without the help of many loyal servants. In fact, many of her confidants were integral to the execution of her alleged crimes. Many servants played an active role in aiding her in the abduction, torture, and murder of numerous young victims. Despite her royal status within the Kingdom of Hungary, eventually, such inhumane crimes caught the attention of the authorities, who swiftly investigated the terrifying reports. In 1610, King Matthias II ordered an investigation led by György Thurzo, the Palatine of Hungary. Thurzo, along with 2 notaries, collected witness statements from over 300 individuals. What finally undid Elizabeth was her decision to move past servants and attack victims of a higher class. According to Rachel Bledsaw, adjunct faculty in the history department at Washington State's Highline College, killing serfs and servants, who indeed had fewer rights, was gauche but not really illegal for a noble. But killing your fellow nobles, even ones of lower rank, was a far more serious problem, and not one that could be ignored. The investigation uncovered a horrifying picture of brutality and violence. Witnesses described the torture and murder of numerous young women, and the physical evidence found at Captivate Castle supported the accusations. On December 29, 1610, Thurzo, accompanied by Bathory's sons-in-law and other officials, arrested Elizabeth and 4 of her servants, who were accused of being her accomplices. 2 trials were held in January 1611. The 4 servants were found guilty and sentenced to death by execution. The details of their confessions and the evidence presented at the trials painted a grim picture of Elizabeth's crimes. But even with the horrifying details of what went on within the castle, Elizabeth herself was never formally tried. Instead, she was condemned to life imprisonment within Captivate Castle. The reasons for this decision are complex. Some historians suggest that the Bathory family's influence and political connections contributed to the prevention of a public trial, which would have likely caused a major scandal. Others argue that the evidence against Elizabeth was not strong enough to warrant a conviction, or that the investigation was politically motivated. The accusations against Elizabeth have also been subject to historical debate. Some scholars argue that she was a victim of a political conspiracy, while others maintain that the evidence against her is overwhelming. The truth about her crimes may never be fully known, but her story continues to fascinate and horrify. But to understand the life and alleged crimes of Elizabeth Bathory, it is essential to consider the historical context in which she lived. The late 16th and early 17th centuries were a time of significant social and political upheaval in Hungary. The country was embroiled in conflicts with the Ottoman Empire, and the Habsburgs were vying for control over it. This period was marked by widespread violence, instability, and a breakdown of social order. The legend of the Blood Countess has often been used to reinforce negative stereotypes about women, portraying them as inherently evil or monstrous. However, it is important to consider the complexities of Elizabeth's life and the historical context in which she lived, rather than simply accepting the sensationalized narratives that have been created over the centuries. Those who argue for her innocence point to the lack of a formal trial, the reliance on witness testimony, and the potential for political motivations. They suggest that the accusations were fabricated or exaggerated to discredit the Bathory family and seize their wealth and power. Those who believe in her guilt cite the numerous witness testimonies, the physical evidence found at Captivate Castle, and the consistency of the accounts. They argue that the evidence is sufficient to support the accusations and that Elizabeth's crimes were a reflection of her own depravity and cruelty. The accusations against Bathory paint a picture of a woman who reveled in cruelty, a figure who wielded her power with a terrifying disregard for human life. The stories, passed down through centuries, speak of a woman who was both feared and reviled, a figure whose name became synonymous with evil. But the truth of Elizabeth Bathory's story remains both complex and shrouded in myths and legends. While the details of her crimes are often sensationalized, the core narrative remains a chilling testament to the darkest aspects of human nature. In the end, Elizabeth Bathory remained a prisoner in Captivate Castle until her death on August 21st, 1614, at the age of 54. She was buried in the Church of Captivate, but her body was later moved to her birthplace, Exed, for interment in the Bathory family crypt. The legacy of Elizabeth Bathory is one of enduring infamy. Her story has been embellished and sensationalized over the centuries, transforming her into a figure of myth and legend. She has been portrayed in countless books, films, and other works of art, often as a vampire or a symbol of female evil. Forever, her story will remain a chilling exploration of power, cruelty, and the dark side of human nature. To this day, Elizabeth's legacy, a blend of historical fact and Gothic myth, continues to fascinate and horrify, ensuring her place as one of history's most infamous figures, earning her the nickname of Europe's most sadistic serial killer. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to Historama for more just like it.